And I'm going live now. It says I'm live, so maybe that is. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it shows one watching now. Oh, you're gonna time. Okay, might as well. I think we're good now.
All right.
You guys welcome to stay.
Welcome to the May 1st DFW SRE meetup. I'm Kevin Berry. I'm one of the hosts.
Randy Lee, Home Depot.
I'm with Spark Post. They sponsored tonight. Thank you. We meet first Wednesday of every month. So far, every location has been here at Home Depot.
Well, we always kind of go through the SRE charter, basically. Kind of what we are, what we're not, right? Grab a water real quick.
So, as you guys can probably see, our goals are simple. Help proliferate that. Proliferate. The adoption of SRE everywhere that it's beneficial, and try to be an educational resource. I'm relatively new to the SRE journey itself, though I've been doing DevOps kind of things for most of my career so far. I think there's a lot to learn still. It's early days for a lot of companies that are represented here, I think.
Yep. All right. Yeah. What else do we need to cover? I think that's about it. So you want to head on? Yeah, we got a GitHub repo, Slack community as well.
Yeah, feel free to jump on the Slack. Yeah, it's dfwsre.herokuapp.com, or you can just hit the link on the site. That's at reliabilityengineering.io or dfwsre.org. Redirects to the same thing. We've got some resources on GitHub. There's some documentation running around. There's links to other useful things. Feel free to open issues and or pull requests if you have anything to add.
And then we usually try to solicit folks to come and talk. Anybody's welcome to come and talk, give a presentation about journey for your company, or if you have suggestions, things you'd like to hear, say. I think we mentioned earlier, any technology is open for discussion, but generally we talk about processes and approaches around SRE arena.
Yeah, we're fairly tech agnostic, I think.
Yeah. Right. Cool.
Yeah.
And then, so for tonight.
So for tonight, we are looking to discuss clearing the way for SRE into the enterprise. Damon Edwards gave a talk at SRECon EMEA last year that was really good. He works at Rundat. It was a really good discussion, and I'm hoping that we can have a pretty good discussion around it here as we go along. I know Randy's come up with a few points that might be good to talk about when we get to them.
Yeah.
We can just see where it goes.
But at any point, just feel free to stop us. These guys, we work every day, so we're here for you guys today.
Yeah.
So, I guess all the rain, I think we had 16 folks today, but you know how it goes with meetups. So you guys gone to a lot of those. You never know what you're going to get, right? But feel free to stop and ask questions. from our perspective, from our companies, or just in general, what is the SRE kind of general industry best practice or whatever.
In this talk, as it was described, he wrote a chapter for the Seeking SRE book, which is, I think, the third book in the Google SRE series.
Yeah, I believe so.
Which describes a lot of the same points, but hearing him talk about it and discuss it, it brings a bit more color to the subject. Here we go.
Now that we tested audio.
So I'm glad to know from the last talk that Google tortures junior SREs. So you can all tweet that out. Just kidding. You know that's going to be the highlight, right? So my name's Damon Edwards. This talk is essentially about the enterprise. And you might tell yourself, well, I don't work in an enterprise. And you just wait. Because wherever you're working today, if you're successful long enough, that history of success, you will turn into an enterprise, which in my book means that you've been around long enough to collect multiple generations of technologies, of tools, of people, of skills. You'll probably have multiple business lines, some homegrown, some by acquisition. So that is what I mean by the enterprise and all the complexity that comes with it. And this is about the troubles that you see a lot of enterprises who are taking the early leap into SRE are facing and what we can do about it. So as I said, I'm David Edwards. My history, I used to be the managing partner of a pretty well-known DevOps and operations improvement consultancy. We were the ops towards dev people, kind of a rarity in the DevOps world. But through that and through a lot of work in the community, got to really see inside a lot of interesting companies, a lot of household names, a lot of high flyers, a lot of not so high flyers, little companies, big companies, everything in between. So that's kind of where I've kind of gained my perspective on the industry. Now I'm one of the co-founders of Rundeck. We make operations tools. So if you see, I guess something's going on in the industry, you see a lot of these companies, enterprises at conferences, right? They're saying, oh, look all the stuff we've got going on. We've got digital, we've got agile, we've got DevOps, CI/CD, right? We've got all the new cool technologies. Aren't we the greatest? Everything's go, go, go. But the reality is you kind of look behind the scenes and you talk to the folks in the operations side of the house, things aren't so great, right? They're in this really difficult position to squeeze between. On one side, you've got all the digital and DevOps transformation coming, I guess this way, pushing down, saying, go, 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 open things up, right? Give us more access, decouple, let us have at it. Now, on the other side of the house, often, or coming from the other direction, often from the same business mandates, is, whoa, lock things down, right? Don't be the next hack, don't be the next breach, keep us out of the news, right? We don't want to be those folks, don't want to be the next major outage, So operations as a field has been squeezed between these two positions, and especially in the enterprise to deal with all the legacy and the organizational complexity. So they all come to this conclusion like, we're not seeing the results we expected. We've done all these things, but why are things still taking too long, breaking too often, and generally costing us too much? They say, hey, you heard this SRE thing, right? Google does it. It's got to be great, right? So, everyone's like, ooh, what do we do? Well, we've got these systems administrators, right? We've got a lot of them. So what are we going to do, right? Let's make them SREs. That's how we're going to be like Google, right? It's going to be fantastic. Wow. You guys are an easy crowd. I like this. I feel like you've been in this position before, right? So, but this is the reality. You're going to love this, right? Here's what happens, right? Phony hair boss comes in and says, you're now an SRE. And the person looks up from their pile of ITIL books and they're trying to figure out the CAB calendar and, this long process. And they said, okay, you're going to use code and you're going to be better at ops, right? So it's kind of this head jerk of, okay, great, we've got this new title. So what happens, right? Well, in the old sysadmin world, right, what happened? Always overloaded, constantly firefighting, right? We're spending our whole life waiting in ticket queues, either opening tickets for other people or answering tickets. Things break, they break again, just for good measure. We break it again, right? And everyone's super busy, nothing ever gets better, right? So the boss is like, everything takes too long, costs too much, and breaks too often, right? But good news, we've got this new SRE thing we're going to do. And can anybody spot the difference? Okay. It's exactly the same, right? We're overloaded, constant firefighting, and just as much a pain in the ass as it ever was. But the bad news is your employees all have SRE titles, so now their LinkedIn is blowing up and they're all leaving you to go make more money somewhere else, right? So, the reality is changing job titles and adding individual skills doesn't make systems administrators into SREs, right? Just because we're using observability, we've got some new, automation tools, doesn't make your folks SREs. Calling them SREs doesn't make it either. The principles of SRE, is really, I think, what sets SRE apart from the classic enterprise operations model. So I stole these from a presentation that Stephen Thorne did at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, which is a great conference to send people to who are in the enterprise and want to learn these new things. And, first one is, SRE needs service level objectives with consequences, right? I mean, full stop, this is kind of the key core principle. It's worth kind of taking a little side detour here on what that actually means. So, if you aren't familiar with service level objectives or error budgets are, I'm assuming if you're here, you probably do. But you can imagine there is this service level indicator. It's some, kind of business impacting measurable thing that the business and the developers and operations get together and says, this is what we believe needs to happen in our business, and there is some objective, right? And this is what the business will tolerate. Let's say it's whatever it is, it's 95%. Then we have that difference. The difference between perfection and that service level objective is what's called an error budget. And it's got some really interesting ideas around it. The idea being that that is time, that is capacity for us to use to try to push things forward, try to innovate and improve what we're doing. But if we fall below that, we've blown our budget, and real consequences have to happen. And this is really, I think, where it becomes fascinating, because think about it, in the enterprise world, they have SLAs, right? SLAs are a penalty on operations, usually defined by somebody else. You must do this, or else there will be some penalty against you. And if you think about the most fascinating part of the air budget idea is that it's really about shared responsibility. That if I'm a developer, if I'm in the business, if I'm in operations, probably call it SRE, we're agreeing that this is a shared responsibility, that we have to keep this level above the service level objective, or else there's real consequences. Some people talk about giving the pager back to developers or not doing new feature development. Whatever it is, all three of us have to agree. We stop and have to fix this problem. Not just ops is dealing with the problem. So that's number one, right? The SREs need service level objectives with consequences. Everybody has to agree to fix it. Number two, SREs need time to make tomorrow better than today, right? This goes to the toil idea, which I'll discuss later, but the idea that if we're stuck in that firefighting mode, we're never going to have time to improve how we work. The whole point of having SRE is to get that engineering time to improve how we work. So if we don't have that time, we're not really doing SRE. And this one too, especially, is a foreign concept in the enterprise, which is SREs have the ability to regulate their workload, right? That there's actually a self-regulation and a self-healing or correcting to how SREs work, and there's a lot of kind of empowerment in that statement that's very kind of foreign to the command and control nature of many classic enterprises. So I'm going to look at these three principles as we go through this presentation. But again, if you want to watch this presentation, I just talked to him in the hallway. He's here. He's going to be speaking tomorrow. He says it's just as good as the one he did at DevOps Enterprise. But these slides will be posted. You can watch his presentation on that. So there's these four forces that undermine SRE principles. And these are really, I call these the four horsemen of the kind of enterprise operations apocalypse. But it's silos, queues, excessive toil, and low trust. These are the things that are going to screw you up. So let's start with the first one here, silos. So silos is a word that comes up a lot. I think it's kind of misunderstood. People automatically assume that a silo is a team, some kind of organizational structure. And the org structure side of the silo is really kind of a secondary concern. The bigger concern is, how is somebody working? Right? So if you think about how someone's working on their own, they've got their own backlog, right? They've got probably set priorities set by, some boss. They've got their own kind of information or context they're working in. They've got their own tools and processes. But the problem is nothing lives in isolation, right? Especially in the enterprise. You always need something from somebody else. This is where the silo part comes in. It's, I need something from somebody else who can do something for me. And the problem is they have their own backlog, their own priorities, their own tools, their own management chain. And this is where these silo effects start to take hold, because these people end up working out of context from each other. And as organizations grow, this is a natural occurring force. We're going to put like with like, because that's what human beings like to do. And when you put them together, they're going to turn inward and start optimizing what they do. And that's how these disconnects start to happen. And specifically, it's these breaks in context. I see things one way, you see things another way. It's breaks in process. Even though we use the same terms, we might do things a little bit differently, or just have totally different terms. Breaks in tooling. How many times do people look at the same thing like Ansible and just decide to do it a totally different way because they need to serve their own purpose. And then also this mismatch in capacity, right? I mean, how many DBAs do we have? How many network engineers do we have? How many security specialists do we have? They often, there's a capacity mismatch between these different silos. And these silos interfere with our feedback loops, right? So the DevOps world, we talk a lot about dev and ops, right? Like Gene Kim's, Patrick Dubois, Jess Humble, and John Willis made a great book called The DevOps Handbook. It's kind of catalogs a lot of these, DevOps delivery principles. And talk a lot about flow, right? You want to flow from dev to ops. You want to start to build these feedback loops and then continuously improve over time to improve these feedback loops. But this happens really in any kind of context, right? In operations, when you have things from I need an environment from somebody, or I need a firewall change, or I need a database change. There's somebody producing something to consume, and you want to consistently have those feedback loops, but having these silos puts these breaks and makes the feedback loops a lot longer. We know that longer feedback loops equal lower quality. And then silos also have this weird condition that arises out of these kind of siloed organizations, is the people in these silos end up becoming basically like a temp agency, right? Well, I'm a DBA. I get a ticket, I parachute in, I do my best job to fix something, I'm back home, I get another ticket, I go parachute in, try to fix something. And you end up kind of bouncing around the organization. And what ends up happening is you get a lot of semi-manual, a lot of one-offs, snowflakes, what we call them, a lot of kind of manual efforts, because you're always kind of jumping from one context to the other. And the management focus of those types of teams ends up being, this is why they call operations, the VPs and no, because their whole point is trying to protect the capacity of that team, because they're just going to get slammed with these kind of one-off requests, and you're always kind of stuck in that constant mode. So we think about our SRE principles and silos. They can an org have service level objectives with consequences? That's really hard to do in any meaningful way in a highly siloed organization. The idea of sharing any kind of responsibility is a foreign thing. Very difficult to do when everything's broken up. They have time to make tomorrow better than today, right? The siloed labor pools, the disconnected processes and tooling, slow feedback loops. That's going to basically what you see today, which is why operations never has any capacity, right? It's always consumed by what's around it. So not much luck there. And do they have the ability to regulate their workload with all these things we described before? You're struggling to keep up that demand. You're unable to protect that capacity. So keeping that in mind, SRE. So number 2 here, queues, right? So all right, we got these silos. So what do? Right? What's our main go-to thing to control our all the disconnects and mismatches we have? Well, we drop this lovely thing in called a ticket queue, right? We all know how well that works, right? You fill out a ticket, it sits there forever. You get a project manager to go bug somebody to handle it. They get back to it. They ask you 3 or 4 questions. You missed the window. You got to wait for the next week. They finally deliver something to you. It's not what you wanted. Do you fix it yourself or do you send it back? And around we go. And the reality is that ticket queues, we treat them like they're free, and we keep putting them everywhere, right? And the reality is, if you study other fields, there's real math behind why queues are actually very expensive. Queuing theory, if you look at manufacturing, if you look at kind of physical world product development, there's a lot of conversation around why queues are expensive, especially for work in progress, right? Now, obviously, a backlog is one thing, but once work starts, interjecting these queues is a very expensive thing. And there's a guy named Don Reinertson who wrote a fantastic book called The Principles of Product Development Flow. It's where I stole this from. And you really want to kind of learn the science behind why queues and some of the things we talk about, like small batch sizes and stuff like that, why they're actually problematic. Fantastic source. But he talks about how there's these real economic costs to queues, right? Longer cycle times, this makes sense, right? We're introducing delays by putting things in the queue. Anytime we introduce delay or drag out those feedback loops, we increase the risk, right? There's more variability because people are kind of blind to the requester. The requester is kind of blind to the person fulfilling it. So we're going to have a lot more variability in there. That also increases risk. There's more overhead. You've got to manage these queues, right? You have project managers and you have everybody pushing, a lot of push going on to get things through these queues. We're going to have lower quality. That's because of the variability and increased risk. And also, there's an interesting one that I didn't really notice, so you mentioned it, is less motivation, right? The longer somebody has to wait to see the outcome of their work, the less motivated they're going to be, right? The developer, puts something in, it's finished, and you don't see it, go live for 6 months. It's going to lose that motivation, lose that feedback. Same side on the operation side. You do these little things, you don't really know what the other side is. You lose that kind of motivation to do your work. So queues are very, very expensive. And so also, we spend all this time, kind of in the lean sort of ideas, thinking, let's build a better picture of the value stream. Let's get people to understand the totality of what they're working on, how things work from start to finish. So we're kind of building this clearer picture of our system. And then we do this great thing, which we explode it, put it into all of these queues, right? So we've actually kind of totally disintegrated and obfuscated all this value stream building and systems thinking work that we're trying to do. And then lastly, queues become snowflake makers, right? Which snowflake is a great little term that means, each thing you do, like that's the snowflake, right? Everyone is technically perfect, it's beautiful, right? But it's totally unreproducible and brittle. Anytime you're doing kind of semi-manual or manual work, especially these one-offs in this kind of siloed labor pool style of working, you're producing snowflakes, right? People are touching things individually, they're doing the kind of one-off. It might be perfect for that situation in there, but it's not working sort of in the broader, they're working out context from each other. And not to mix metaphors, but these snowflakes become like time bombs, right? It's like these little things that are differences in the environment that people stumble along later and trip them up. Or worse, you can't automate things, right? Because the only thing worse than automation that doesn't work is that automation is just a little bit wrong, right? So snowflakes are a pretty dangerous thing, and if you have an organization that's very ticket-driven, siloed organization, you're going to be blowing snowflakes out one end while your team on the other side is trying to automate things and chase their own tail. So the thing about ticket queues and these SRE principles, they reinforce the siloed behaviors, so all the things that made SLOs and real consequences different from silos are just made worse with resulting in ticket-driven culture. All the economic costs of bouncing around from all these queues eats up all the time. Good luck making tomorrow better than today. And these queues obfuscate that pressure that's being put on these people fulfilling the requests. Therefore, a lot of workload is heaped upon them. Good luck trying to regulate your own workload. So the next one's toil, or excessive toil, I should say. And I've declared toil the enemy of SRE. I don't know if that's really true or not, but I love this out of the SRE, first SRE book. Rebecca Rao has this great definition, so I'll just read it. Right? So toil is the kind of work tied to running a production service that tends to be manual, repetitive, automatable, which is automated, tactical, devoid of enduring values. I think is a great litmus test there. Like, what am I doing? Am I building enduring value to my company with what I'm doing, or is this something that's just transitory and I just kind of have to do it to keep things going? And it scales linearly with the service. If we go from 10,000 users to 1 billion users, do I need to linearly add this kind of work and see more of this work as we go? And I think this chart helps kind of break it down, right? Because a lot of enterprises, people see their job as that toil, right? They're like, wait a minute, that's what I do. I toil in the digital salt mine all day long. So you kind of have to really change their mindset to where, hey, that toil looks a little bit icky, right? So, toil, it lacks enduring value. It might not adding something that's really going to add value. And if you look at kind of the lean world, this is the concept of Buddha. It's a good way to look at this. Like, there's waste that is necessary. It's just stuff that's not adding enduring value. You just have to do it to deliver to the customer. And then there's the waste that doesn't add value. It's not necessary. You just stop doing it. Versus engineering work, which is all about building enduring value, right? Toil is kind of rote, repetitive, which can kind of feel nice sometimes, just getting that groove. But that's different from engineering work that takes human brain, right? It takes creativity, it takes the ability to iterate on ideas. Toil is often very tactical. Engineering work tends to be more strategic to move the business forward, or strategic to get rid of toil. Toil increases with scale versus engineering work that actually enables scale. And toil can be automated. Engineering work, requires human creativity. So a lot of this kind of might seem like no duh, but I think if you work in a large organization, kind of really making this sink into people's heads, the difference between toil and engineering work is a key step. So why does this really matter, right? Because, toil eats that engineering time, and then engineering time is needed for two things. You want to empower people to make tomorrow better than today. You want to empower people to make the business better. So you need that engineering work for making the business better, and also for reducing toil, right? It kind of helps them get out of that tailspin. And that toil is at this kind of unmanageable percentage of person's capacity. They're buried in that toil. They're not getting any time to do engineering work, which is number one bad because they can't move the business forward. But number two, it's really bad because they're stuck in the tailspin. They're in a downward spiral, death spiral, right? They don't have the capacity to even get out of the toil that they're buried under. So that is really the deadly part of toil, is that it kills the engineering capacity or the creativity capacity of your most expensive assets, which are your human beings, right? So back to our principles. Got three of them here again. Remember that if you're buried in excessive toil, it keeps the team from contributing engineering work to uphold their end of the shared responsibility deal, right? So it's like, this thing's always breaking. We're always, we're blowing our air budget. Well, can't do anything about it. We're buried in all this toil. Obviously, if you're buried in toil, there's no capacity to make tomorrow better than today. And also buried in toil, there's no capacity for the engineering work to even reduce that toil. We can't control our own destiny. So last force here before we talk about happier things. Low trust is something that's kind of endemic to the enterprise. And a really interesting thing about it, think about where decisions made, right? So our people on our left here, right? People with the hands on the keyboard, they're closest to the problem. They're closest to the business. They're closest to the customer, really, right? And they have all the context to make decisions. But yet, it's people 4 or 5 degrees away, right? The highest paid person in the room. That's who we're always turning to the enterprise to make these decisions. And constantly you see it happen in 2 ways, which is kind of a paralysis at the keyboard level, and also you see it in terms of escalations, right, where things keep getting escalated. You have people in the NOC, or people that are watching the monitoring or the page, they can't actually do anything, right? The first thing you do is escalate on up the chain. And it's a curious thing. So this guy, John Allspaw, this is also DevOps Enterprise Summit last year. He used to run all the technology at Etsy, and now he's actually an academic researcher in the field of human factors, which he hangs out with people that study like airplane crashes and nuclear power plants, and trying to figure out how we better operate complex systems. And he had this great thing where he asked the audience, "Is this dangerous?" Right? You kind of feel a little puckering when you see that. And he's like, "Yeah, but what if it's just a little routine that we run on a content cache every once in a while? Not so dangerous, right?" Then he asked, "Is this dangerous?" Right? Yeah, this dangerous little case here, right? Feels pretty simple. Doesn't feel dangerous at all, right? He's like, "Well, what if I told you that it's a health check on a load balance?" Right? Suddenly now changing that's going to be a little dangerous. And his main point was it depends, right? All the work that we do, running complex systems, the context always matters for the work that we do. So if that's the case, why do we have it so the people who have the most context to make those decisions are not the people making the decisions? It's the people that have the least amount of context that maybe haven't even touched that keyboard and other than for email in multiple years, right? It's a serious problem. And also now we combine that low trust with our ticket systems, right? Now it really starts to get miserable, right? We have this illusion of control, which is, we're gonna have all these approvals. We want to have approvals for everything that we do, right? And a very interesting kind of exercise that we have this. We have a lot of approvals in ticket systems. Go look at the approvals. Figure out number one, what's the total number of approvals that you had in a period of time? Which are the ones that were just information related? Something bad, scar tissue. Something bad happened at one point. So now every VP needs to know every time somebody wants to go and do it. Subtract out the CYAs, right? Those like, oh, I just want to prove that I follow the process, so I'm going to route this through the organization. And then this is where it gets really kind of touchy, which is subtract the ones that the people doing the approvals are too far removed to actually judge whether nothing's good or bad, right? I call this mostly guessing, right? They're just based on some past idea. Oh, sure, it doesn't seem too bad. Go ahead and do that. And ask yourself how many are you left with, right? And how many of those were the right call? And how many of those actually got rejected? Good story. Back in the consulting days, we worked with a large U.S. insurance company. They had like about 2,000 people in the technology organization. For the first 6 months of the year they were working with them, they had over 25,000 distinct approvals go through their technology organization. Right? Talking like 300 people, maybe director level or above in the organization, and 25,000 approvals. And how many of those actually got rejected? Like less than 1%. And you look at why, it was always like they didn't, some procedural error. You didn't dot the I, you didn't cross the T, something like that. It was rarely ever because they're actually perceiving some sort of risk. So it becomes very dangerous when you have these low trust organizations and you're trying to kind of do the illusion of control of routing things through all these tickets. And it's very much, it kind of goes against sort of the SRE principle of being able to have that shared responsibility in an organization and really figure it out yourself. You see the high performing organizations in this model, they're the ones that empower the people closest to the keyboard to solve the problems. So low trust, right? Call people low trust have a really difficult time with shared responsibility. It's just driving nuts. So it's really hard to actually do. People closest to the problem are the ones that have the context for it, but their tasking, their priorities, and their decisions are largely out of their control. What's the chance that they're going to be able to make tomorrow better than today? How are they going to convince somebody 6 degrees away that time should be allocated to them to fix their own problem? It's likely not going to happen. And if people aren't trusted to plan and design their own work, what's their chance of them regulating their own workload? So these are the four forces here. And so what are we going to do about it, right? What can we do differently to change things? The first one is, the concept of lean. You guys heard of lean? Something called Kaizen here in Europe, right? That's the idea of kind of came out of the total production system, lean manufacturing world. It's a way of looking at your processes and figuring out what's getting in the way and where are the wastes along the way. There's a lot of kind of things here that you can learn. But the first idea is that all processes should be studied with an improvement discipline, right? People think, oh, well, there aren't processes really in the firefighting incident response kind of side of the world. But the reality is they are, right? They're just all ad hoc processes. But if you look at them, you'll find commonality and similarity across them, and each should be looked at as a process. And this is part of it, by starting with looking at failure, first looking at delivery, you really learn a lot about your organization, right? How do people actually work? How do they respond to stimulus? How do they deal with the systems around them? So, make sure that you're looking at your incidents with as much rigor as you do your delivery processes. Talk to the folks on the development side of the house. I guarantee you they're kind of using some type of methodology to study their delivery processes. Hopefully. And then, there's a lot of things you can learn from the lean world. A lot's been translated already to the DevOps context. I think that will be applicable in the SRE context. Value stream mapping, like kind of like on the left here, right? We're gonna, get people in a room together, talk about, all right, that particular incident, what happened, let's map out the process. Who did what, talk to who, what you talk to, we'll get the turn for that. What happened, where were the, and then step 2, what went wrong, what got in the way, what things were, screwed us up. And that's kind of the red pen pass. And then last kind of pass being, all right, what can we do differently? What are the countermeasures we can put in place so these things won't happen again? Then we turn that into actual little action plans, put that into people's backlogs, and start to improve things. So these kind of discipline, these kind of process improvement already exist in other most likely in other parts of your organization. Bring it into the SRE conversation as well. It's also very important because it's often have a hard time convincing executives that these processes need to be fixed, right? Often they look at it as, just here's your ticket system, work harder. And make it part of your organization's discipline. So kind of a more concrete step is, getting rid of many of these silos as possible. We hear a lot about this as this cross-functional team idea. Let's try to start putting people on the same team. So we have kind of the build and the run together. That's kind of one of the one of the ideas people throw out there. But key point number one is it's really just about getting rid of as many handoffs as possible. It's not really a board model decision as much as it is how can I connect people together that can be in the same context, use the same processes, use the same tools, not have those breaks in context. And really the key part is that it's a horizontal, shared responsibility, not the everybody does everything, right? That's just the bad misconception about this model. And board model doesn't really matter, right? Case in point, there's and this is cartoonish, right? The Netflix model, right? Which is cross-functional teams, build and run, shared responsibility, and freedom of responsibility, they call it, right? Or there's the Google model, right? Again, cartoonish, don't say anything. Google friends over here. But, there is a development team, there is an operations team called SRE, right? But they have these clear handoff requirements, they have the air budget consequences, in the same way that the Netflix model is building the shared responsibility by putting people on similar teams. The Google model is building shared responsibility with these other kind of tools and techniques. And guess what? Same high quality, same high velocity results. Both, look at both organizations that are kind of known for their, the quality of how they build and run their services. So it's really about that shared responsibility more than any particular organization model. And why focus on these handoffs so much? Number one, your people are your most valuable assets. You're hiring these SRE skill set, which is expensive, right? No more outsourcing to the cheapest location. We're building better, faster, stronger workers here. They're very expensive, so stay out of the way, right? And instead of having where we're going to start the backlog and then bounce them from ticket queue to ticket queue to ticket queue to ticket queue, and all the problems we talked about before, get out of the way. How do we put them together so we don't have those handoffs, don't have to bounce through those queues? And then we're reducing the friction, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of OODA loop. It came out of the U.S. Air Force. A guy named Boyd was the one who invented it around fighter pilots. It's sort of like the TCA or almost like the scientific method, right? But the idea is, can you observe something? Can you orientate yourself to it? Can you make a decision and take action? They realize that for human beings operating complex systems, like flying an airplane or running a nuclear power plant or running a complex web service, as long as the faster people can get through that loop, the better decisions are made. So, invest in the right instrumentation, right? Give them the visibility that they need. Invest in the methods for collaboration, checklists, get the right tools to be able to investigate, issues. Empower them to make decisions, empower them to take action, and help people tighten up those loops. We spend all this money on our people, make them better, right? So people say, all right, what about the handoffs, right? We can't get rid of them, right? So we can't put all these specialists on every team. So what do we do, right? Aren't we stuck just back with the same old ticket queues? And how do we communicate across these different kind of cross-functional, horizontal responsibility, shared responsibility teams? Aren't we back in tickets? And that's really where this operations service idea comes in. That's actually a name that my company, Rundeck, invented. We've seen a lot of organizations putting this together. Sometimes it's under the platform engineering team. Sometimes it's just something that happens organically in the SRE kind of transformation. But the idea is, how do you take those shared services, those capabilities, and turn them into pull-based services, right? So those teams can use them on demand when they need them. They don't have to bounce into a ticket queue to get a firewall rule change. They don't have to bounce into a ticket queue to get a new environment or to scale something or to run a health check on something. They're taking that goodness and they're turning it into full-based self-services. And the key thing is kind of like sort of imagine like EC2 versus like an old-fashioned managed service provider. Old-fashioned managed service provider, they might have given you a web interface to hit a button to get another one of something. But, it was a bunch of human beings behind the scenes that would do it for you. And you really have no control over that button other than you could push it to get another one with a certain SLA. Compare that to how like EC2 works. Not only can you hit the button to get another one of those things, but you can actually define what that button does. Right? And that's really where the operations service model starts. Powerful is empowering people who are typically outside of the normal kind of trusted operations domain. How do you empower them to run privileged operations tasks? And how do you empower them to actually define those tasks themselves as part of their delivery process, which gives us faster handoffs, which allows us to tighten those feedback loops, put people in control of their own destiny. And it works within the org model, right? And it's not something that's really tied to this kind of cross-functional idea. And, the popular use cases we see people build this operations service type capabilities. Number one is get rid of the if I can fix it if I can get to it problem, right? The old I know what that problem is, but I can't get to there. So now I've got email or text or chat somebody who can do it, right? Versus empowering them, and empowering people outside of that operations to do privileged operations tasks themselves, right? Do that safely. Another use case is avoiding the dog pile, right? Which is one of our customers that talked about this. It's like, they're on a bridge call and they figure, I think this is box blah blah blah. And so you go and log into box blah 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 and you run top. And the first 10 things you see are your colleagues running top on that box, right? So it's really a problem, those OODA loops, trying to make decisions, trying to figure out what's going on. And in organizations where you have the dog pile, right, you end up with this, kind of a lot of guessing. A lot of try this, try that, and everyone's signing doing different things. And are we making progress? I don't know, but we're, what's that old expression? We don't know where we're going, but we'll make a good time, right? That's, the dog pile. Versus having kind of an operations service idea to say, hey, there's one place that we're going to run these commands. Maybe it's an ad hoc command, or maybe it's a kind of stored, like a saved job, like a checklist that we're running. But the idea is one person can run it and everybody can see the output, right? You can kind of follow along and share that output with a broader crowd. Also helps when you have a lot of security issues where it's like, well, how are you going to bring in some random developers to see a problem? How are you going to let them do that in this environment?
Yeah, okay. Sorry. It's great information. Like, I think book has it as well. I want to ask you, like, you both have been doing SRE model for a bit,
Yeah.
Right? So, a couple of questions. What type of what is the background of people who qualifies as SRE? That's one.
That's a good question.
Right, and the second one is, I mean, he talks about like leaning on the lean method, like basically observing your process and where you can make improvements. But from what we've done, we built our APIs from scratch. So we had golden signals discussions on what they will be, where they will be done.
Standardizing and all that.
Right, in the beginning. But if you already stood up infrastructure or stood up application, you have to go back and develop those into the existing model, right? So that would require a full-time developer to be a part of the SRE.
Not necessarily.
It depends on how your team's organized. In my environment, at least, we have an old application that's probably 15 years old that is a core piece of our business. We have dedicated development teams working on that.
Right.
We also have newer teams that are working on APIs and services that communicate with that old application, but also work independently of it.
So you're building a new middleware.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're taking a lot of the middleware that was built for our original app, or built into the original application, pulling it out.
Right.
And in that situation, we have, when I first started, SRE was an independent team, a full-fledged, basically operations team.
Right.
For about the past 8-9 months now, we are now organized along the Spotify model, which is closer to the Netflix model. It's kind of a hybrid between Netflix and the Google models, where each one of us embeds in a development team. We help champion their services, their processes. We help make them better at achieving their SLOs, SLAs, and we also we dig in. We help solve the problems.
So,
And then the background of the team members.
so I can add on the
Oh, yeah.
Home Depot perspective of
Yeah.
that. Then we can address that question. So at Home Depot, I think I mentioned earlier, so .com kind of went on that original journey, right? We'll move to the cloud and let's try to move to a modern approach. Google's doing this SRE thing. They just released a book. Let's try to adopt that in the Home Depot culture, right? So we have kind of a mixture of that, and we have many different people, a mixture of meaning a standalone group and embedding with the development teams as well, right?
Okay.
And I think you mentioned, that full stack developer, the unicorn of, hey, we expect all of our developers, or as you get closer to a staff level, that you should be able to do full stack, be able to tune your app and talk whatever that language is, networking, DBA, firewall.
Right.
And the junior developers are just focusing on, feature code delivery, right? So we have advocates kind of on both sides. .com, the way we run it is we have a separate organization that is funded from the various teams. So we use 5-10% as a general tax, if you will, right? So in order to help you run your service at scale, it depends on, and I think maybe some of your questions and the way we kind of judge it, and Google does to an extent, is what is your level of service and how important is it, right? What tier? So what we've done is kind of break the applications into tier rating, right? It's just it's got to be up 99.9% of the time, 99.5. Where does it fall in tier rating? And let's get a 10% or 5% cut, or can you just use these managed services and do what you need to do with your application? So that's kind of the first perspective that you look at of, hey, is this a core application, or are we sending up a new one? That helps kind of answer some of those questions. And we also have other teams that are more, say, store application based, right? Where it's okay if it's only open during store hours versus .com's got to be open 24/7, or as close to it as possible, right? So we have kind of those two different camps of trying to move towards a more modern approach and SRE practice. And .com is more of, hey, we come in, like a lot of things that I've done with the different teams is we'll have the wheel of misfortune and knowledge transfer. So I'll come in and say, you're the developer. I'll be your smart hands. Here's our one pager on your service. I'm going to go break your service in this environment over here. So I'm going to cause some chaos. And then how well do you know your application? How well can I troubleshoot it for you, right? So I'm kind of flipping the table, flipping the script on the team, and we'll do it within our team as well, right? Meaning, hey, we just had this production issue last week. Let's go replicate this in a non-prod environment, see how well our documentation, our observability, and signals are. Can we detect it, and can we mitigate it or revert it, whatever, quickly, right? And then I'll do that with the development team. So there's kind of a wide range of models of SREs.
Right.
That's kind of all over the place, but I want to kind of just share that perspective. A lot of different companies, I think he talked about it in a few slides back of, hey, here's how Google does it, here's how Netflix does it, and they're kind of two different ways. Google in general will say, hey, if you are a new product and you can go build it and run it yourself, fine. But if you get to a certain point where it's this big and it needs 24/7 support, then I think he talked about it, the barrier of entry to get SRE support to carry the pager, you're going to have to go through all of these things. It's kind of going back to, hey, I've got this thing that's been out there for a while, or this is a brand new application. We've done that here at our company where, hey, we've got this matrix team that's got this thing, right? Authentication or, key generation, whatever,
Right.
Something critical in our component structure that we rely on. Would you allow me to come in and do a application reliability review? Okay. Meaning, I think you talked about it here, let's coming in, and I think you mentioned as well, let's come in and evaluate your system completely, right?
Right.
Why are you doing the things you're doing? What are your processes? If it goes down, how quickly can you revert? What monitoring and all those kind of things, and then I review that, and then we go through several rounds of this reliability review, and then action items and things come out of that of, hey, we should fix this right now, or this would be nice to have, but it gives us a better relationship and understanding of your application.
Right.
So that's kind of the way to get around it. And then something that's been out there for a while, but something that you're getting ready to launch, typically what we require is, hey, before we launch, here's that operational readiness checklist. I think that's in the Google book as well, right? Have we done destructive testing? And say it's running in the cloud, right? And I get multi-region. If I take down a region, do I see any impact on my customer because it's just failing over, right? Let me observe that, right? Let me send it through some chaos engineering paces to see if it's behaving the way I expect it to. let me put my thinking cap on. Okay, well, if I break it, your integration to the service over here, how do you respond? Do I see customer impact? Do I see logs? Do I see
Shouldn't that happen like in the beginning?
It should, but you can't always get that, right?
At the time of design
Sure.
or implementation, or the beginning of the sprint, of like, hey, here are the service level agreements we'd like for you to include health
Right.
checks, signals,
Whatever the
observability requirements are, or monitoring requirements are. So, outside of just having monitoring through like New Relic or some tool,
right, whatever.
you have your own way of, because you can set up from API to API, you can do health checks
Right.
within
Heartbeats
one
and such,
heartbeats and things like that. So if you do that in the beginning, wouldn't it be
It makes it easier. But
Yeah.
again, you come in, so
depending
say
on the project?
I have
yes.
a brand new application, right, and I'm going to integrate with you. You've been around forever, right? But I don't know.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not supporting any of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have this contract that you go, okay, if you abide this contract, then I'll guarantee. But then it's like, well, okay, did you publish? What is the expected latency, right? What is that service level
Yeah.
agreement, right? Well, what if you breached that? What is the penalty? What is your uptime, right? Are you 99.9, right? It's a chance for you. They should be able to provide that. If they don't, then it's a courtesy. Hey, will you allow me to go on this reliability review journey with you? I promise not to beat you up. It should be a collaborative thing, right?
Right. I mean,
Just like a blameless postmortem culture, right? I'm not going to beat you up, right? This is for the betterment of both of us, right? I need to understand your service and all the things that if you're not responding, then I need to know what I need to do to prevent, to cover for you.
Yeah.
And hey, how can I do better? Maybe I can give you some engineers. You're like, hey, well, I'm always working on stuff too. I'm busy too. Well, hey, what if I throw a couple of engineers to help you go put in that thing I want, right? And we establish a better relationship there, and we put in some additional features or whatever, or monitoring, whatever. So those are some good ways to establish some good relationships and help build. Yeah, so we actually have a formal process here. It's in the Google charters as well, but we actually have some a couple pages of here's the things that should be discussed. It should be like a 1 or 2 or 3 phase process, right? Where we talk about high level. Where's your documentation, and what is your service, and how often do you deploy, all those kind of things, and then moving into what if you're down? How long are you down? How quickly can I notify you about it and you revert back your last change, right? And all those kind of things, and going deeper. And then what if you have the cascading failure, right? So it's going through the deep level discussion.
The downstream impacts. So.
Downstream impacts. What if, what is your normal volume level or air rates or whatever? Okay, can you provide that to me? And again, you can't always do that, right? As we talked about earlier, there's air budgets, and somebody's got to be accountable for it, right? And then you try to establish that, well, hey, who is ultimately responsible for the air budget? And then, so who could or should be system? I was actually chatting with Matt about that, trying to figure out, well, typically it's kind of your system admins, right? Your system engineers that typically kind of work their way into it. But we've actually found, and what we've done here at Home Depot is we've hired a lot of college grads. So like we have a shop down in Austin, so UT is kind of a feeder school. So we got a brand new building down there we're trying to fill up. So they're coming in thinking, hey, I'm going to be doing some Python, I'm going to be doing maybe some Java, and we throw them into this operations role, and like, hey, what is this about, guys? Well, guess what? Yeah, carry the pager. We'll work you through the system, but hey, can you go add code into some tools, right? To do load testing, to do destructive testing, to go add into the infrastructure. So we just kind of give them a taste. And Google does this too. They have a whole SRE program where you come in, you try it out. If it didn't work, hey, no worries, right? Didn't work for both of us. You move on. Maybe you find a dead team that you want to work on, right? So we kind of try to adopt that as well. And we work with other SRE teams for other areas, order fulfillment or whatever, that we kind of just trade notes on, hiring people in. And developers can be SREs, but you can maybe ask James over here. He's a dedicated developer. But a lot of them are just, wired to, hey, I just like doing my feature delivery. At the end of the day,
Right.
I'm just comfortable. All I want to do is feature delivery. Yeah, maybe you ask me to come over here and help you work on tuning the cache or
Right.
building out a pipeline or whatever. But I want to slide back into this role over here, right? So it's just like anything. You just kind of throw it at them and see if they like it or not. But traditionally, it's more the systems engineer. See
In fact,
what
this
you're.
is one of the things that was brought up in our team meeting. Our manager was telling us that we were doing well, pushing fast, in delivering features. Now we have to take a step back to do the monitoring side of it, to do that's something that's having a bit bad, because the faster you push, there's more chaos, more unreliability.
Right, and you introduce more problems and you start eating into your air budget. And then I'm glad to hear that our partners are saying, hey, we need to slow down and partners, because sometimes we hear say, hey, we can go run our own whatever, Splunk query, BigQuery. Look, I can get access to Stackdriver. I've got this process to build my code and deliver it. What do I need you for?
True.
Right? And we have to justify our existence as well, whether we're embedded or we're a separate org over here. We have to come back every once in a while and say, hey, look at all this value that we add, right, to you in delivering your, as he was saying, your high scale, high volume application that's critical component of HomeDepot.com. That's making all this blah, 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 right?
Yeah, the metrics, the dashboards, and then in trouble times, when you have troubleshoot things, these guys have destructive testing. These guys have to do destructive testing before. If you pay attention to the e-commerce world, Lowe's was down like an hour for a certain day. Home Depot for how many years? They were never done.
During Black Friday,
On
Saturday,
Friday, on Thanksgiving, of course, we being in Home Depot, we always hear this part because this is it's good news for us, But to do that, thanks to these people doing destructive testing, for us.
It's a thankless job, right? The sysadmins, SREs, DevOps, whatever title you want to attach, right?
Right. So, like, skill-wise, what skills are required? Because, like, every time you go on Indeed or LinkedIn, they have listing that's like a mile long.
Well, didn't he just say, and Matt, the guy that started this meetup, and then he abandoned this and moved out to California, but he was a big advocate for, hey, we need to get paid, right? Because we're expected to know,
All of this
and
stuff.
even here at Home Depot as well, the director that kind of started us on a journey going to the cloud and partnering with Google and having us go on the SRE journey, it's like, look, yes, this is a superhuman ask of an engineer to be able to build and orchestrate and maintain a continuous integration and delivery pipeline, to be able to go stand up a caching, queue and environment, and build out the infrastructure to run all the code, scale it, and all this. So yes, right, and then go work with the developers and help them debug and look at New Relic to look at why their JavaScript errors are spiking in the unload page of it, right? It's everything and all that.
It's for those jack of all
business analysts,
just like the system engineers of the old.
It's for the jack of trades, master of none.
That's why he was just saying,
master of some, right?
You bring these people in, right? Because you want somebody highly skilled that has a certain discipline and approach to things, analytical, right? So bring them in and get out of their way, right? But yes, it's a superhuman ask if the company is looking at an SRE organization and process in the right way. And that's part of what we're trying to do with this group, is to get a cross section of local companies and figure out, are they paying the right things? Are they hiring and going about building SRE teams the way we think they should be?
Right. So the reason my silly questions is because
that's not. It's
so
valid.
I've played as a test engineer. I've played as a project manager, business analyst. I was a quality assurance manager for a long period, and then I was like, okay, I want to do something different. And I was doing automation and pen testing at Yum Brands as a contractor. And they said, oh, we have an SRE thing. And I was like, oh, I never heard of that. That was last year, and I was like, okay, so what can I do? Like, well, they do automation, and you got to know cloud, and it's like, okay, I know cloud. I'm testing on.
But that's not
Docker
really
images.
SRE, is it? It sounds like you know enough about what Google and what the industry is trying to say what SRE is. That's more DevOps, right?
Right. So
SRE
that was my
implements
job.
DevOps,
Yeah,
right?
that was my job before, like building automation, putting it on images, running in cloud.
Right.
I've done all of that, right? But the SRE part came in after. So I was like, okay, I'll do SRE part. Put me in the team. So we just stood up our team, and I've learned a lot, but there is no scope of work basically defined properly. That's what I see. Like, there's no set scope. We still
There's
have
no
queues.
charter for the group.
Right, we still have
This
pages
is what
we
we
need to
are
deal
and
with.
aren't.
Yeah. And it's like mix of everything. It's kind of
A lot of times that's what SREs are
Team-
expected to
yeah,
be,
yeah.
right? But you still need to have some kind of organization. And I think that's what he's
The
trying
next
to
step.
say here, right?
Right.
Is whether you build the tool yourself or go by his product Rundeck and go build that to help reduce the friction between you and Matrix team, so you can ultimately deliver a pipeline and processes to make it easier. And that's what our mantra is here as SREs is how can I reduce the friction for you, right? Like you talked about the queue to queue to queue. How can I get, if you're a developer or delivery manager, how can you get your code out there as fast as possible to help you build the chaos engineering and destructive testing and all that to ensure that what's delivered meets the rigid infrastructure, not just did it pass, I can click the button, I can add cart and those things. Right? So it's building those frameworks to be able to help the delivery partner.
we've done that too. Like I was saying, all our microservices are written in Go. So I wrote code to basically test all the health checks, and we would, when the developer got done, we would build it, deploy it, and the test would run automatically and produce the results. Everybody gets notified. So all that work was done. Like I did all of that, but it doesn't still feel like an SRE part.
It's not. It's DevOps.
You know what I'm saying?
And my opinion is that's DevOps.
Because we don't have that.
Air budget, right? What's
Yeah,
the
we don't-
consequence of you deliver something
Right.
feature-wise that's bad, right? And
I
you
think we're
cause
still in our
latency hit
infancy.
or
We
air
haven't
rates.
found our footing yet.
It sounds like what you're asking
Right.
is, to go back to the basics and, maybe
Right.
as he suggested, or maybe he hasn't got to it yet, start a book club, right? Here's
No, it
the
makes
three
sense.
books, right? Here's the workbook, right? Here's how
Read the workbook,
companies, Home Depot is in there, and I think he said he's in Seeking SRE, right? Here's how real companies have implemented, and SRE is, implementing DevOps, right? But applying this construct of, hey, we need to figure out what our SLIs are. What are those indicators that things are bad,
Right.
right? Is it we had to revert code back, or you delivered code that's causing these errors and impact the customer, or latency goes down or up or whatever, right? What are those things that are important to the business? And then you go, okay, these are the objectives. I want to try to meet this 99.9% uptime, right? And you start putting those contracts. You say, these are the things I want to do, and you establish those first. Then let's go figure out the tools, the processes to enforce that,
Right.
and get the partners on board with, my service is a tier 3. I only need to be at 99.5. Or no, this is mission critical. It's got to be at 99.9. Well, okay, that's going to require X, right? So it sounds like you're saying, hey, we've got a lot of people that want to do SRE, but I don't know that we're doing it. Let's define what
we're labeled.
you got the title.
Yeah, the title.
We're properly labeled. We have a separate group. We sit in a separate space. I think what we're missing is the charter itself. We're doing all the ceremonies and all the work, but there is no handshake on, like, hey, this is the agreement. And this is what you're going to deliver. And this is what we're going to do.
He said something interesting. He said they're all in a group together, which
We are
Yeah.
fully Google model.
right. Is that truly like the way? Because like in my environment, we're divided up between managers over different operations, support like different parts of the business. But the expectation is that we know the other operations stuff going on. At
So
least
you guys
me coming in new. cross
cross
functionality.
pollinate those
Yeah.
as well.
So I'm
Stick
wondering,
engineers here and
yeah.
there.
So I'm wondering if they're in their cluster, if that's kind of hindering them from being
Well,
true
like as I was
SREs.
mentioning-
Still an operations silo.
Yeah.
So we are a small team.
Sure.
Like total of 20 people.
Mm.
And we're running Pizza Digital.
Okay.
All of it.
Mhm.
And we acquired the company that used to be our vendor. That's another 50, 60 people that mentioned the company is the same. But from the size perspective, we are fully managing
Mhm.
the 20 of us. So that's all we deal with. Our business POs, our business POs, the front end POs, they are. And these 20 people include front end devs, back end devs,
Mhm.
all of that. It's a pretty small team. Like we're not a humongous
Yeah.
amount of people, but we're doing a lot of work with that small team.
And I think that's where you're trying to hit on it. Is, are you building the right process? And it sounds like you are. To
Yeah,
deliver
that's what I was saying.
code.
Like we're in our infancy. Like we are still building out
So you're still doing the DevOps portion.
portions.
You have the SRE title, but you don't feel
We're
like you're
still-
doing the SRE principles.
Yeah, we're not doing the charter properly. I mean, we may be doing it in next week or two, but from what I'm seeing, as far as I've been, we're not there yet.
So you went from automation engineer, you skipped DevOps, you added the SRE title, but you're doing DevOps.
I was doing DevOps when I was doing the test. When I was a
Right,
test
right.
engineer.
The automation or whatever the title was at the
Yeah,
time.
it was just whatever the company gave me. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Well, and it
Stuff
sounds
that I
like
wanted.
you kind of solved the problem of, hey, knowing what the things are that should fire off alerts and
Right.
you
So
know,
we did
who
that
should
in the
we-
beginning because we built from ground
right,
up.
right.
So like right now, our monitoring is easy. My New Relic never pages me. I don't have hits.
Which is part of SRE.
right.
Yeah.
My Splunk alerts don't wake me up. In
But
the
are you
morning.
measuring toil like you was talking about, right? How do you Google says, hey, you need to measure your toil and you should contribute 50% back to
Back to them.
your processes. You're already doing that 50% more, but are you also building processes out and establishing SLOs, gathering
Not yet.
SLOs,
So that's the
aggregating
part.
it, and then sharing it with your partners going, hey, you've been doing a great job.
But
Your
this is
air
what
budget
you're costing me.
But this is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we are not there yet. I think it'll take us another 6 months before we get there.
Yeah, what
Baby steps.
Right. Yeah, it definitely makes it easier.
The only thing was it was much of a complex architecture, and these particular assignments were good, but the problem was that again the technology wise, for example, current project with developing microservices, and Microsoft has got its own framework which they are using self-started. So everything was set up, but then like DevOps team like they are trying to think that they don't have the idea of like, how to integrate this thing. It's a new technology all the way.
Right.
So there is kind of friction, but maybe down the line after some time, this may be much more valuable.
I got you. Yeah. So as we were saying earlier, we don't really apply a technology. And there's actually Google or Siri. So that's their customer reliability engineering. So he actually gave a talk at. So this is the European Middle East SRE Con. So there's typically two. I went to the one in March of last year, which was the U.S.-based one. He gave a talk there about SRE can be pretty much implemented anywhere, and enterprise teams, legacy systems, even more so, right? Because if you define those things, right, what makes success? Well, what does leadership typically want, right? Distill down and tell me green, red, am I good or not, right? And that's a big part is what does normal look like? What does good look like? And then can we meet this, right? And let's put tests in to meet that spike. Know that we're going to be okay, right? Hope is not a failure, right? Let's go do the chaos engineering, destructive testing, along with regression. Let's go build those pipelines, add that on to the delivery of code. Let's go add those other things so that we can know that here's normal, and if we have this volume spike, it'll scale up and there won't be any impact to customers. And I can tell leadership, hey, it helps. But my point is, it doesn't matter what the technology stack is. You can apply the principles.
For example, cloud is definitely like you have all the things. So for example, if you want something specific, like you have a separate project, which is not on the cloud. If you want something, you always have to search something or you want to develop on your own. It's a kind of, the gap. But in the cloud, the advantage is like you can easily whatever you want and you can create.
No, I get what you're saying.
It will
Yeah.
be much more faster because for SRE, the thing is the fastness is very important.
The which one?
Velocity.
Velocity, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
velocity is the key thing. Otherwise, there is no point.
So, yeah, actually, if I can turn it
You
around.
don't have to be in the cloud to apply SRE principles, though it does help.
So, yeah, here we go. So this is one of the branding. So we did here at Home Depot, enabling speed and high availability. So trying to get the best of both worlds, right? I'm reliable, I'm up, I can measure how much I'm up, latency, what impact is to infrastructure changes, to code changes, and I can still move fast, right? In the old days, it,
Doesn't that automatically translate into speed?
um,
If you're reliable,
not necessarily, no.
how
So if you're reliable, right? So I think he hits on, I don't know if we got to yet, there's always, yeah, he did earlier with ops in the middle and the pressure competing forces, right? That's the old model that DevOps attempted to try to fix, right? It's meaning, hey, if you never make any changes, my charge as an ops person, sysadmin, whatever it is, I protect my sandbox. If nobody brings anything new in, I'm going to be up.
No, that's not how I meant. Like, if you're applying SRE principle without having cloud, or
What we're trying to say in conjecture is they're
that
mutually
they're
exclusive.
not, yeah, exactly, they're not
Yeah.
interdependent. So
Right.
what I'm saying is, if you're truly applying charter of SRE,
I think I get where
you're producing a reliable product. So your speed is there not because you're not letting anything through, because
well,
you're mitigating all those factors in the beginning.
I think you're mixing, hey, if I build out the infrastructure and the processes, it'll scale and it'll be reliable by de facto.
No, I'm saying it the other way around.
Okay.
If you build your code with embedded principle
With
of reliability,
Approach,
with approach
of
SRE,
coding,
yes,
yeah,
then you're automatically,
it helps.
Yeah, so,
But you're always changing the code, right? So
true,
you
but
can't
that
rely
doesn't mean you drop what you
True.
build. You have
But
to
that's why
keep
you
that
put in the, destructive testing and performance testing as part of the pipeline,
exactly.
right? So that hey, some guy introduced some little thing and now the call to the database is taking,
Your query is
whatever,
too expensive,
right? And then by the time it gets out and scales, you're done, right?
right. So that's
Right.
what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, I got
do
you.
it,
If you put in the
SRE
right processes and constructs,
from
then-
the beginning of the inception of the project or initiation of the project, I
Yeah.
think speed is gained automatically.
So the challenge I see in my new role is, and I have a question about how you guys approach this, is we have all these dashboards like he was saying, and we know 4 weeks back how this service performed, and we have a standard deviation on all our Grafana
right? Yep.
monitoring and whatnot. But we don't know from the customer's perspective what's normal,
Well,
and how do you approach that, and how do you, and even sometimes they don't know, like, one of the examples that was given to me was like the person who's monitoring site catalysts and whatnot, they see certain errors come up in there. And they're like, well, why didn't you guys notify us of this? Well, we mitigated it. We didn't know that you wanted to be notified that that was happening. So you got to tell us, what is normal to you.
right.
And
And that's
what's
where I go back to what I was saying earlier, right?
Yeah.
If you establish what is normal, what are your indicators of problems,
Right.
whatever that is, right? Number of errors, latency, whatever, then you
How
move
did
that
you bridge
into
that? I mean-
objectives, right? Hey, so what we actually coined here is values of volume, availability, latency, errors, and tickets. Tickets kind of the toil, right? And we built a framework of, hey, I'm going to take signals, right, from the application, and they're distilled into the typical, hey, what are your number of error percentage of 5xx's for whatever, right? What's your availability? Well, it needs to be 99, whatever.
based on what, right? You know, I'm doing health checks and this one fires and fails. Okay, it dips down. Then what we tried to, and it's not a perfect system, but Google's an advocate of this too, is if you define those SLOs from an operational, because you have some experience there, you go to your dev partner going, hey, and the product manager going, hey, this is your product, right? You own whatever. This delivery manager is making code changes and delivering that product for you. Can you guys agree on these service level objectives? Yeah? Okay, great. I'll build out the infrastructure. I'll provide that report to you. And if you don't meet that, that's where the air budget comes into play, right? What is important to you? It's what's important to you, right?
Like AI.
Yeah, and you can absolutely apply. And we've gotten some with, for us, it's been like order trending, right? We applied some AI, right, and kind of fed in to say, hey, what do you think the order rate's going to be at this date and this time? And then we can apply it. But it's more about what's important, right? Kind of like that tier rating of how critical is this service, what's important to the consumer, right? And a lot of the struggles we've had recently is like, well, how fast should that page load? And I make a change and now these objects are loading down here on the onload page, or on the onload event is firing. So the synthetic monitoring of New Relic is saying, hey, you're going to affect conversion. And we're going, no. We flipped it, right? So we're delivering a page that's more capable of action sooner rather than delivering the page and then firing all these AJAX calls afterwards, right? It's what's important to you as a product owner and a delivery manager. And building the tools to give the data. And as I always say, you take the emotion out of it and it's a data-driven decision.
Yep. Here's your data.
That's what adding those constructs around. You've got this team of skilled engineers that can do all the things. Now let's organize it and structure it in such a way that, you know, we've got dashboards or, you know, high-level distillation to show leadership. And so we actually have that framework available across all the different organizations. I can go in and look at, hey, how's this guy over here, his API, is he meeting his SLOs? Right, not having to go log into his tool over here to figure out if he's having a problem. But yeah, it's hard, right? You know, hey, how do I know if it fired? But if you make it consumable, you know, by anybody, they can go in and consume it and say, hey, yeah, I see impact over here, so I know I'm impacted over here as well.
In my organization, the SLOs are informed by the SLAs. We've got enterprise customers. We have agreements, big long service contracts or whatever. Those generally inform our objectives that we use across the organization. We've got some customers who are more sensitive than others as far as latency or how many messages they want to push through in a certain period of time. And that helps us inform our capacity planning, our objectives, what indicators we need to be able to measure those objectives and to build our budgets. We're actually, our transformation's been fairly long. We're just getting into setting error budgets with our development teams this quarter.
You guys are used in specific tools for this?
Yeah, it depends on the teams because some of our teams, like, they are more comfortable with something like Datadog. And then we have our legacy teams who are very comfortable with something like Draconis. Generally, we try to use the best tool for the job. We've got something like, you know, OpsGenie, PagerDuty, you know, send out the pages. One thing we found very effective is when we handed the pager back to the development teams as we were getting ready to start this push of, okay, let's define our objectives toward service. Once they saw the real impact of when things aren't reliable, it tended to change the conversation because they don't want to be waking at night either.
I think in Home Depot, you guys also have it's almost like a partnership, right? When we make a deliverable, you also have a say if you see that in the in the Valet page, if you saw our app is being below the SLA, SLO for a long time, you also have a say about whether we should slow down and delay whereas the pure ops, the jobs of a pure ops would be
Make it work.
Yeah, it just work.
Yeah.
You deploy.
They don't have any
Support.
teeth, right?
Right.
Yeah, the empowerment, right?
Yeah. You're almost like a partnership to make sure that the site is reliable. You have a
And again,
say.
it's about data, right? You take the emotion out of it and
Mhm.
just let it be a data-driven approach and discussion.
Well, and kind of back to your question about like what skill set. Like, when I was a full stack, I developed apps for operations, and I had to make sure it was DR. So I didn't want to get that call, tier 3. I gave all the tools and the steps and everything, and try to mitigate that as much as possible too. And that skill set kind of has brought me to where I am now, to a certain extent. So
Yeah, and I think
I was going to say there is no like one single skilled person. Like in our team, we have a dev. There's me. There's admin from Splunk, who not admin but like super user from Splunk and New Relic, and that's our team, 4 people.
yeah. So a lot of
And we
things.
do everything together. Like whatever problem that one doesn't know, so all 3 or 4 of us,
Right.
okay, let's get on it.
So one of the things that I've done that I found is extremely receptive is, like I said, hey, you have this production issue. So you kind of look at the overall, we go to our one pager, look at a diagram, what's the request flow of this, and hey, you depend on this thing over here, and this guy acted up, right? Okay, what does that mean? All I see is my indications that there's a problem to the customer. So then I go, okay, I need to go to the product manager and say, hey, I need some time from your team to be able to build in some reliability. So then we start opening the discussion of, hey, well, what if we cached that request? Or what if you retried, right? And we start digging into all those deeper level things. And what if that fails and then this happens and this happens? Okay, well, let's go build a regression test. Let's go build a destructive test for that. Go run it, right? Do a wheel of misfortune. Oh, I thought this and this would happen, but this happened. Oh, that's interesting. You put in an action item, right, and go address that. And then you get time from that development team to go build that in, or I go build in something in the infrastructure, you go do something in the code, and together we have a more reliable system. But things always change, so you always have to continually do that as part of it and review it. But the development team, like I said, I'd have these wheel of misfortune, kind of put them on the spot in a very informal but somewhat pressurized approach, and they loved it. Like, hey, when can we do that again, right? When can we do that? Because they always have new engineers come in as well, and it's a good chance for them to learn the system as well as what we need and how critical we are in the overall.
It's a consulting partnership.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. So, time check. It's after 8.
it's got like 9 minutes left.
Of the video.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much more after this.
Yeah. So basically, he kind of goes into his OAS.
Okay.
Basically, somewhat of a sales, in my opinion, but it's overall.
Yeah.
And I can give my perspective at Home Depot. I wanted to share some thoughts there. Operations as a service. So, cool. I guess we'll finish that and then good to go.
Access, you can't just like send them to Splunk and tell them to go dig around and track. You have to get something. So that's another key one. Another favorite of mine is I don't read wikis. I'm an expert, right? So it's like at some point somebody goes, oh wait a minute, the service has changed, right? There's a new flag you have to do with bad things are going to blow up, right? And then somebody else from a different team says, hey, every time somebody restarts this thing, the alarm bells go off. We all have to wake up. Can you please pause the monitoring before you do that, right? But what happens, right? Sooner or later, someone has to restart something. That's like, I got this. I'm an expert, right? And they go and do it the way they've always done it because they don't read the wiki, right? I mean, somebody was talking yesterday about documentation. It was a great talk, but kind of, it brings up one of the problems with documentation, which is, especially in a firefight, nobody reads it, right? They go, oh, I know what I'm doing, and they go and do it, and often makes things worse. Versus sort of with the operation service idea, it's like, well, hey, if we're all working on defining these jobs, we can just say, hey, the service has changed. I'm going to change the restart job, right? Or hey, we need a positive monitoring first. I'll add another step that says positive monitoring first. So now when our expert hero shows up, and in 3 o'clock in the morning, that happens before I've got it. They run the same restart command. They think they're running the same restart command. Yet we're actually running the new restart command, and things are. Uneven and hidden skills, right? This is huge in the enterprise, especially in very siloed organizations. You got people, I don't know how to do something, but someone else does. I don't know where to find that person. So on and so forth. Everybody's kind of siloed out. Versus sort of operations service ideas. Hey, I know how to do X. I know how to make these standard firewall changes. Somebody else needs to make this standard firewall will change. Maybe it's every time we add a new partner, we have to spin up a sandbox for them to test out the APIs. We've got to punch a little hole in the firewall. Let that person in the firewall team define that procedure. Other people can use it. And now it's not just the kind of one-off situation. You start to build more of these, build upon these building blocks. And then, off the classic one, right? You guys all did this one, right? Let me do that for you again, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. And while you're doing that, that's taking up all your time, and the world's burning behind you because you're not getting to the other things that you need to be doing. Versus sort of the operations service mindset is, hey, I'm going to set up a job for you to do it yourself. Right? This is the kind of Tom Sawyer, have people paint your fence for you idea, which is encourage them to even create these own jobs themselves. Look at it and say, yeah, that's pretty good. It's going to work. You give them permission to run it. Now you can focus on the other more pressing issues or things that you never would have gotten to before because you're able to offload a lot of that labor. So it gets us back to tickets, right? People are like, the tickets, I love tickets. What are tickets actually good for, right? Number one, documenting to problems, issues, exceptions, right? Trouble tickets, that was the original idea, right? So they are great for that, right? If that service doesn't do its operations service doesn't do what you expect it to do, then you can file a ticket. Or you have an enhancement idea, file a ticket, right? If something's really, not making sense, file a ticket. Second is, and especially in enterprises, you're just going to have regulatory reasons or compliance reasons or some other reason that you actually have to have a valid approval process or a paper trail to show that you followed some kind of approval process. So ticket systems are actually pretty good at that. That you're doing it in email. But where the problems lie and we really have to get out of is using ticket systems as a general work management system, right? That everything I do has to bounce through this ticket system. That's just all the problems we're talking about. And it comes up, well, security compliance won't they stop me, right? And the reality is, at first maybe, right? They usually get a little scared. You say, oh, we're going to let people outside of traditional operations run privileged operations tasks. And you're like, no, you're not, right? But if you really talk through it, the reality is, what's their idea of control today? It's like, oh, we got this ticket system, we route this thing for approvals, and then it finally gets to somebody, and they go and do something, and they come back and they write it up, right? They have no idea what actually happened. So, with this kind of operations service idea, you're now building all that evidence collection into the system, right? So you can, build the access control policies and security into it. You can also, build all the compliance checks into it as well. You now have a full audit trail. Who did what? When did they do it? What ticket was it tied to? Have to do that. And so it really becomes a place for you to put that compliance and security into your platform. And kind of one more thing here. People say, well, what about ITIL? Right? I think folks counter ITIL in their organization. So, you ask ITIL people, right? And they say, oh, SRE is ITIL compatible, right? No problem. You ask people who've seen ITIL implemented, and they're like, how? Okay. How is that possible? And the reality is, this is kind of an unsolved problem here, but if you look at Agile, DevOps, SRE, they have this self-regulation and shared responsibility features that totally kind of undermine the command and control ideas of ITIL. And, people focusing on the standard change idea. They say, well, it's a standard change. In ITIL, that means that you've done something that's been approved before. Someone told you to do it. And you've done it, I think it's 3 times or 5 times. It's now classified as a standard change. So therefore, you don't need approval. Right? But it still implies that you did this thing before and somebody approved it. It doesn't really talk about this idea of kind of self-regulation. Think about what continuous delivery is about. It's about building the system to make yourself safer. you think about SRE, the shared responsibility model, it's about being in control of your own destiny and working it out with the business and the development stakeholders in real time to stay within the bounds of that safety. It's very different than kind of where the ITIL model has gone. Not to say there aren't a lot of good kind of vocabulary and definitions and things in the ITIL books. They're actually not the worst read. I've read them. But it's just, the question is, are we doing these contortions to defend the sunk costs that we've all spent going down this path in operations? It's a debate that needs to be had. I think SRE is right now. So a couple more things here. Shift left the ability to take action, right? You got to push that control as far left as possible. Empower the people closest to the keyboard to do it. Part of that is just cultural and organizational enablement. Also, a lot of that is tooling. How do you give those people, the level one folks, as close as possible, all of the tools, the skills, and the guardrails they need to kind of operate the service to get help with that type of problem. Reduce oil, right? Craft oil level 3 steam. Do it, right? Set oil level 3 steam, and then fund the efforts to reduce oil, right? People say, oh, well, solve your own problems. We need to kind of swarm help folks that kind of have teams that over the limits. I know the Google books are about 50%. Teams kind of go back and forth with that's a good idea. But set a limit, stick to it. Start a book club. Unlike, the DevOps movement, one of the other things is actually effective. It started with the books, great books. Shockingly, most people are not ready for this. Right? You have to use the word SRE and SRE in our enterprise. So some are free. Actually, a chapter for new ones. Recap. SRE is one of the
There's an audio book too.
right?
Free audio book. Computer version.
Oh.
It's in the GitHub repo.
Focus on moving those silos is, really leverage the operations service idea. Shift left, control decision making. So what that kind of taking on ourselves to see around the industry and see a lot in our open source community, also our commercial customers, kind of building this operations service idea. I think we came up with the name, kind of a label on it, but really trying to document how to see. You go to that URL, there's a kind of an early book that's online. If not, hit me on Twitter or email web.com stuff.
Yep. So yeah, operations as a service. I wanted to kind of add a little bit and share what Home Depot has done. So not, I wouldn't say direct SREs, but we have had engineers, developers create tools. Internally, we talked about the Valet dashboard, and James mentioned, hey, they look at it, leadership across the board can look at it. That's just high level, snapshot of how's this service doing, and you do it by day breakdown, right? Where are you kind of relative to those trends? We also have, we talked about, I think we talked about the self-service model. So we built, so it used to be, we would go through and do load tests and performance testing, right? We had big, huge monthly releases, right? Old school days. And then they've got to get in the queue of the performance team that sits over here. Hey, go test my application and see how it scales and performs. Like you had to get on their queue in order to make the release, and all this just kind of back and forth. So this internal tooling team built basically taking a couple of different vendors and frameworks, and you can basically scale on demand and say, hey, you write the scripts, and we use a vendor to go and scale up that test in the cloud up here and hit your application. You can have to do whatever, request there, whatever, and they can go and do that. So now you've given that ability to whoever. So we use it for our purposes. Hey, let me go hit this service. Let me see does it scale. The dev teams can go hit it and see how it scales, and everybody can do it, right?
You guys use software.
So the QE folks, the quality engineering folks, they use SoftLab. This is actually a different vendor. Spot here. I'm kind of. Yeah.
Because it was cost was too high. I ended up using K6 It's a coding framework that you can script different JavaScript.
Okay.
And I did exactly the same thing without the vendor. I just scaled up a bunch of cards and
Go launch.
Blast. And I was testing at 10,000 meters per second,
Right.
10 different cards.
Yeah.
I used Grafana and
To get your
to get my
signals.
graphs and numbers and things like that. So,
But yeah, it used to be, we had what we called an army of people. Right? You got all these release engineers, all these performance engineers, all these QA engineers, all these operations level 1, 2, 3, right? And then the army of developers writing all the code. .com, from this perspective, and now we're down to a few, small teams, right, doing the same things, but now we've automated a lot of that. We've got to boost the friction, right, to deliver faster, and then we try to build in the reliability along the way to make it reliable as well, so we can get that speed in.
so I supported those 14 development. So for a year. Because everything I automated crap out of everything I can think of. So
That's part of the mantra, right? Whether you call yourself DevOps or SRE,
whatever it is, like
the toil and all the stuff, right?
so I think I fit well with just the automation, like whatever tooling needs, I could provide that, and then make our lives easier. But see, the weird part is maybe I don't have the all the tenants down in my head, but like so, our app went live and we had tons of HTTP errors, and we're tracking them all, and I'm reporting them all. Like, hey, so I know the APIs inside out because I've been working with them for years, so I know exactly what message should be where, and okay, this is wrong. I do the research, I spit out the numbers, like okay, these many calls failing, or this error message does not seem right over this period of time. I think the problem is here. I need to develop it to, the code and talk to the other development teams,
Right. You kind of
brokering between the two, and like so, and luckily or whatever you want to call it, but I turned out to be on the right path of digging. It was the messaging coming back from the database layer was generic. So whenever that message bubbled up, the app team didn't like specify which message goes for what type of error. So it was bucketing like, multiple errors into it or something like that. And we have fixed it. I mean, this still falls under like calling out the numbers and troubleshooting. But maybe I wasn't part of the SLAs and SLOs when it was initially set up. Maybe they
Well, they should be reviewed. Actually, I just went through an exercise for our APIs and services on the top of the funnel, right? So
Right.
from the
Yeah,
back to the website. But it had been years really since we had established those. Gotten buy-in from development managers, product owners, and now we're, as volume naturally increases and integrations and new clients and all the
Right.
things, now your volume metrics are all over. Errors or latency are still mostly in line with what they were, but you just actually can grow, right?
Right.
So it's like, okay, so I went through the exercise of, okay, let me look at Black Friday numbers last year. Let me add X percentage of growth because we have a natural growth year over year.
Right.
And then see where we land and adjust the numbers. Well, hey, wow, this service is still over that. Okay, so I go to those guys. Hey, you have new clients. Is this natural traffic? Is it bots? Is it whatever? Right. So it's a good opportunity to re-engage your partners and say, hey, let's take a look at it. We have these things going on. Do we need to adjust the capacity scale? So we're constantly switching hats all day long as far as skill set that you ask, right? But those are all in the realm. And then building the tool to collect that, and then maybe pumping it through AI to give you a forecast. That's all in the realm, right? While they're just sitting over delivering a feature code, right?
Yeah, but maybe it's just new
Adding
to
a
me,
widget.
and it's like because like what you said, context switching
All day.
every hour of every day, and it's like, wait, what did I get done today? You take a like stock of your day at the end of the week. How much did I do today?
Yeah, but you don't. I mean, no matter what level of the organization, you should have some measure of what am I delivering, what value am I adding.
Yeah.
You talked about objectives, right? But every group should have some charter to say, hey, these are things.
So some days sound pretty good. Oh wow, I knocked that out today.
Yeah.
But it's like it took me a week to knock that small thing out because.
But if you can measure and say, hey, I delivered these things that reduce toil.
Yeah, so we implemented writing
Whatever.
work. So we have like job tickets, internal job tickets. Hey, I'm gonna do these DNS changes. I'm gonna set up these routes, whatever you want to call it, and then I got this little job to build, so you can do this.
So I can get that time back to go do something else.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And like you said, that's the creative engineering rather than just a rote. Hey, I'm just a guy just doing all the route changes and all the things. Let me go build a framework for it. Give it to them so they can self-service. Security comes in. They can look at. I'm okay with that. You build a framework. Now you can go build something else over here.
So we have a rally board we create our own tickets, and then we slide out accept it, and then start working on it.
Work it through the flow.
Working through the flow. Sprint type flow. We don't time box it or anything. Because you never know when
More of
you
a Kanban
yeah,
flow, but
exactly.
still, yeah.
But at least okay, I got this much done. So,
It may help, like my organization, we had to come up with a split because SRE is still responsible for certain core infrastructure that no development project team has any real care for. It needs to be up, but everybody cares if it's not work, doesn't care. So we ended up splitting our time. Like we try to keep about a 50-50 balance between what's internal core infrastructure type things versus what we're doing for our product team. It may have to see if we can do something like that, be able to set aside blocks of your workday or whatever. Like this is the time I'm working on this, then I'm back.
yeah, a little better time management based on the tasks that I handle. The infrastructure side we don't have to deal with much in a sense because we are fully on GCP. We don't have to worry about scaling
There's
up.
still a little bit. I mean, yeah, you're not necessarily having to deal with scaling events, but you talk about DNS and routing. That's still
Those are but those are also automated tasks. Like I don't really have to do anything manually. For example, it's a Terraform script and Python that generates the script. So we just have a CSV file. We enter a line in there. It generates. That's it. I walk away from there. There's not, and then.
But somebody's got to maintain that script and understand the infrastructure,
exactly.
right? Somebody has to be.
Yeah, I mean, we did that already.
Build the tooling.
Yeah.
Right. So
and maintain it. Make sure you're up to date with Google, and it's
right.
So
Yeah,
somebody's
we had
got
a
to.
problem
It may not be
with
you.
But it is all of us actually. All four know what's going on, so we all help out. Like,
But yeah, you should be
whoever
checking
has-
in on it
yeah.
every so often, of course.
Yeah. So that's
That goes in that whatever percent you want to like they're saying. The Google recommended is, hey, I do 50% creative work, contributing back to that, checking on that, and the other 50% is I'm on call or I'm doing some
research or some kind of. So I think we pretty much fit into Google model. I think that's what our director's approach is. I maybe just have personal gap of knowledge of where our SLO and SLI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and
and where they're recorded, so I can refer back.
Yeah, and so a lot of the meetups and going to the SRE conference, and I actually got to go and talk to the SRE team at Google.
Right.
That's like the first thing that they always say is establish your SLOs, establish your indicators. Figure out how you're going to collect that, how you're going to report and disseminate it, and let that drive back into your work assignment. Hopefully. There you go. Now you look good coming in. You're like, hey, I got it.
I look so intelligent.
This is what we're going to do, boss.
I'm pretty sure it's there. I just don't know. We haven't visited.
It sounds like it's an area, and like I said, we try to make that transparent, right? Across.
Right. Yeah.
across the org. Even so much as we have meetings across other teams that are in other product areas and enterprise teams, and we're all kind of going, well, hey, yeah, we all have disparate monitoring tools. How can we have a common platform so we can easily figure out this guy's having a problem over here, and we can consume their overall compliance with their SLOs, right? And we're all trying to kind of talk the same, and we built out a training pipeline for SREs and developers who are curious about it. I helped build out a training program that says, hey, I built out a training pipeline to go deploy something in Google, go use these other tools we talked about.
Right.
And anybody coming in to be an SRE, that's part of the onboarding process, as well as other teams that are trying to build out SRE teams or developers that are just curious. They come through and we have, hey, go read this Google book or these chapters, at least having kind of that, hey, this is what you guys to help normalize, then you speak the same language. You know what an SLO is, and a wheel of misfortune, do you do it? Here's how we do it. And you kind of cascade that process across. It doesn't matter what the technology stack is. You can all talk the same language. Yeah.
Thank you for hosting.
All right, sure.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I'll come with better information next time.
Would love to hear how that goes.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm gonna steal a pizza for the road.
So, one last thing. So, in the meetup, the docs, we mentioned it, but there's a link to the GitHub that has a link to
I saw that,
the
yeah.
RE site that has the Slack and all that stuff. So, we'd love
You
to get.
said the audiobook, is that on?
I think it's on the SRE landing page.
I think so. There's a GitHub repo of like I think it's a female computer generated,
Oh, okay.
audio book basically of the original SRE.
Okay.
And there's also PDFs out there, so there's no excuse
I
to
have a
not have.
book, I just,
Well, there's PDF too, so I can give access to
anytime.
PDF, and there shouldn't be any, at least for the original book, shouldn't be any excuse for you to be able to submit
Right.
that across your org.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you
to
very
meet you.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see you. Get some pizza and stuff next
Got
time.
it. James, I'll see you later.